Billy hated being the new kid. Again. This was his third school in 2 years and he was tired of the stares, the whispers, and the feeling of being completely alone in a crowded hallway. He clutched his backpack a little tighter as he walked through the front doors of Northwood Middle School. He was small for his age, with messy brown hair that always seemed to fall into his eyes. He wore plain clothes, jeans and a t-shirt, hoping to blend in. He wasn't trying to stand out, not this time. He just wanted to make it through the day without any trouble. The school was bigger and louder than his old one. Lockers slammed, kids yelled across the hallway, and the air smelled like floor wax and old pizza. Billy navigated the crowded hallways, trying to find his homeroom. He kept his head down, avoiding eye contact. He just wanted to find his class and disappear. He finally spotted the room number and slipped inside, taking a seat in the back corner. He hoped no one would notice him. He pulled out his notebook and started doodling, trying to ignore the feeling of being watched. This year, he told himself, things would be different. He would make friends. He would fit in. He just had to get through today first. He really hoped the school would be better than the last. Unfortunately for Billy, Northwood Middle School had its own set of problems, and those problems came in the form of Mark and his crew. Mark was a head taller than most kids his age, with a sneer that seemed permanently etched on his face. He swaggered through the halls like he owned the place, and in a way he did. Mark wasn't alone. He always had his 2 best friends, David and Kevin, flanking him like bodyguards. David was the muscle, big and strong, always ready for a fight. Kevin was the brains, quick-witted and always ready with a snide remark. Together, they were a force to be reckoned with. They had a reputation for picking on kids who seemed weaker or different. They saw it as a way to pass the time, a way to feel powerful. They'd been doing it for years and no one had ever really stood up to them. Teachers tried, but Mark and his friends were always careful not to get caught. Mark spotted Billy as soon as he walked into homeroom. He nudged David and Kevin, a smirk spreading across his face. "Looks like we have a new fish," he whispered, his eyes never leaving Billy. David chuckled, cracking his knuckles. Kevin just nodded, already thinking of ways to make Billy's life miserable. Billy was completely unaware of the attention he was drawing, still focused on his doodles. He was about to find out that Northwood Middle School wasn't going to be any easier than the others. The first few days were a blur of small but persistent annoyances. It started with name-calling. "New kid," Mark would sneer as Billy passed in the hallway, sometimes adding a creative insult about his clothes or his hair. David and Kevin would snicker, making Billy feel like everyone was laughing at him. Then came the pushing. In the crowded hallways between classes, Mark would deliberately bump into Billy, sending him stumbling into lockers or other students. "Oops, sorry," Mark would say, but his grin told a different story. It wasn't an accident, it was a game. The lunch money was the worst. Billy didn't have much to begin with, but he needed it to buy his lunch. One day, as Billy was paying for his food, Kevin casually snatched $1 from his hand. "Finders keepers," he said, running off with Mark and David. Billy was left with just enough money for a carton of milk. Billy tried to ignore it all. He kept his head down, avoided the hallways where he knew Mark and his friends hung out, and tried to focus on his schoolwork. But it was hard. The constant harassment was wearing him down, making him feel small and helpless. He knew he had to do something, but he didn't know what. He was trapped. He missed his old school even with all its problems. At least there, he wasn't a target. Here, he felt like a bug under a microscope, constantly being watched and prodded. The backpack incident happened on a Tuesday. Billy was sitting alone at a table in the corner of the cafeteria, trying to eat his meager lunch of a carton of milk and a small bag of chips. He felt eyes on him, but he tried to ignore them, focusing on the bland taste of the chips. Mark, David, and Kevin were huddled together, whispering and pointing. Billy knew they were talking about him. He just wished they would leave him alone. He was so tired of being their target. When the bell rang, signaling the end of lunch, Billy got up to leave. He slung his backpack over his shoulder, and that's when he noticed something was wrong. It felt heavier than usual, and it smelled awful. He cautiously opened the backpack and peered inside. His stomach dropped. It was filled with garbage, crumpled lunch bags, half-eaten sandwiches, banana peels, and a carton of spoiled milk. The stench was overpowering. He felt a wave of humiliation wash over him. He quickly closed the backpack, trying to contain the mess and the smell. He turned around and saw Mark, David, and Kevin standing nearby, laughing. Mark gave him a thumbs down. "Nice backpack, new kid," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Billy's face flushed red. He wanted to disappear, to run away and never come back. But something inside him snapped. This wasn't just name-calling or pushing anymore. This was deliberate, cruel, and humiliating. And for the first time, Billy felt a flicker of anger. A real, burning anger that pushed aside the fear and the helplessness. This was the last straw. For a moment, Billy just stood there, frozen. The initial wave of humiliation threatened to drown him. His face burned and his eyes welled up with tears. He wanted to run, to hide, to disappear. He could feel the eyes of the other students on him, watching, judging. But then something shifted. The anger that had sparked inside him began to grow, pushing back against the humiliation and the fear. He took a deep breath, trying to control his emotions. He closed his eyes for a brief second, and when he opened them, something was different. The shyness, the timidity, the vulnerability, it was all gone. His eyes, which had always been soft and gentle, now held a steely glint. His jaw tightened and his shoulders squared. He looked taller, stronger, more confident. It was as if a switch had been flipped, revealing a completely different side of him. Mark, David, and Kevin seemed to sense the change. Their laughter died down and a flicker of unease crossed their faces. They had been expecting tears, maybe a plea for mercy. They hadn't been expecting this. This new Billy was someone they didn't recognize. He wasn't the easy target they thought he was. The game had changed, and they were about to find out just how much. The air crackled with a new kind of tension, a tension that had nothing to do with bullying and everything to do with a reckoning. After school, Billy knew he couldn't avoid it any longer. As he walked towards the exit, Mark, David, and Kevin blocked his path. Mark smirked, trying to regain the confidence he'd lost in the cafeteria. Well, he said, his voice mocking. Looks like the new kid finally wants to play. Billy stopped, his eyes fixed on Mark. He didn't say anything, just waited. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest, but he refused to show any fear. We don't like your attitude, new kid, Mark continued, taking a step closer. You think you're tough now? You think you can just ignore us? He shoved Billy lightly, testing him. Billy didn't flinch. He stood his ground, his eyes never leaving Mark's. We're going to teach you a lesson, Mark said, cracking his knuckles. David and Kevin stepped forward, flanking Mark like loyal soldiers. They were clearly expecting an easy fight. They thought Billy would cower, beg for mercy, maybe even cry. But Billy didn't do any of those things. He simply took a deep breath and said, his voice surprisingly calm, I'm not afraid of you. Mark laughed. Oh, you will be, he said, and then he threw the first punch. He aimed for Billy's face, expecting to knock him to the ground. He was wrong. So very wrong. This was not going to be the easy fight he had imagined. This was going to be something completely different. Something he would never forget. The garbage in the backpack had unleashed something within Billy, and Mark was about to pay the price. Mark's punch was clumsy and telegraphed. Billy easily sidestepped it, a move that surprised Mark. Before Mark could react, Billy delivered a swift kick to Mark's side. It wasn't a wild, uncontrolled kick, it was precise and powerful, sending Mark stumbling backward. David and Kevin rushed forward to help their friend, but Billy was too quick. He spun around, delivering a sharp elbow to David's chest, followed by a knee to Kevin's stomach. Both of them doubled over in pain, gasping for air. Billy moved with a speed and grace that seemed impossible for someone his size. He wasn't just throwing punches, he was using techniques. He blocked, dodged, and countered with surprising skill. It was clear he had been trained. He used his smaller size to his advantage, moving under their clumsy attacks and exploiting their weaknesses. He targeted pressure points, delivering quick, precise strikes that left them disoriented and in pain. Mark, David, and Kevin were completely outmatched. They swung wildly, but Billy easily avoided their attacks, countering with lightning-fast strikes. It was like watching a dance. A deadly dance where Billy was the lead and they were just clumsy followers. Other students who were leaving school stopped to watch, their mouths agape. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. The shy, quiet new kid was beating up Mark and his crew, and he was doing it with style. It was a display of skill and power that no one had expected. The rumors about Billy being just a weak new kid were clearly wrong. Terribly wrong. The fight didn't last long. Mark, David, and Kevin, used to easy victories and relying on their size and numbers, were completely unprepared for Billy's skill. They were quickly reduced to a tangled mess of limbs, groaning and clutching their stomachs. Mark, his nose bleeding and his pride shattered, lay on the ground, staring up at Billy with a mixture of pain and disbelief. David and Kevin were in similar states, bruised and battered. They had never been beaten like this before. They had never even imagined it was possible. Billy stood over them, breathing heavily but otherwise unharmed. He didn't look angry anymore, just determined. He had proven his point. He had shown them that he wasn't someone to be messed with. The other students watched in stunned silence. The balance of power at Northwood Middle School had just shifted dramatically. The bullies who had terrorized the school for years had finally met their match. And that match was the shy, quiet new kid they had all underestimated. Billy picked up his backpack, the garbage still inside, and walked away. He didn't say a word, didn't even look back. He just kept walking, leaving Mark and his friends to wallow in their defeat. As he walked, he could hear the whispers of the other students, their voices filled with awe and respect. He had become a legend, an unexpected hero. But he knew this was just the beginning. He still had to figure out how to navigate this new reality, how to deal with the attention and the expectations. And he still had a backpack full of garbage to clean out. The next day at Northwood Middle School was different. Very different. Word had spread like wildfire about Billy's fighting skills. Everyone was talking about it. The whispers followed him down the hallway, but this time they weren't whispers of mockery or pity. They were whispers of awe and respect, maybe even a little fear. His reputation had completely changed overnight. He was no longer the shy, quiet new kid. He was Billy, the fighter. The kid who took down Mark and his crew. The kid you didn't want to mess with. He walked through the hallways with a new sense of confidence. He still kept to himself, but he no longer felt invisible. People gave him a wide berth, some even nodding in acknowledgement. He could feel their eyes on him, watching him, trying to figure him out. Even the teachers seemed to treat him differently. They were more polite, more attentive. It was as if they were afraid of him, or at least, afraid of what he might be capable of. Mark and his friends were conspicuously absent. Rumor had it they were at home, nursing their wounds and their bruised egos. No one dared to mention their names in Billy's presence. The cafeteria was a different experience too. No one bothered him. No one stole his lunch money. He sat alone at his usual table, but he didn't feel as lonely as he had before. He knew that everyone was watching him, but this time it wasn't with malice. It was with curiosity and a grudging respect. He was still the new kid, but he was no longer an easy target. He was something else entirely. Something much more dangerous. The whispers about Billy weren't just about the fight itself. They were also about where he learned to fight like that. Some said he was secretly a ninja trained in the mountains. Others claimed he was a black belt in karate. The truth was simpler but no less interesting. Billy had attended a special school for a while. It wasn't just any school, it was a school that focused on self-defense and discipline. After a particularly bad incident at his old school, his parents had decided to enroll him, hoping to give him the tools to protect himself. He hadn't enjoyed it at first. The training was tough, demanding, and often painful. But he had learned valuable skills, not just how to fight, but how to control his emotions, how to stay calm under pressure, and how to defend himself without resorting to violence unless absolutely necessary. He hadn't wanted to use those skills at Northwood. He had hoped to blend in to avoid conflict. But Mark and his friends had left him no choice. They had pushed him too far, forcing him to reveal a side of himself he had tried to keep hidden. Now, as he walked through the hallways, he couldn't help but wonder if he had made the right decision. Had he just traded one set of problems for another? Was he now destined to be known as the fighter, the tough guy? He didn't want that. He just wanted to be left alone. But he knew that wasn't likely to happen anytime soon. The legend of Billy, the deadly fighter, had been born. And legends, once created, are hard to erase. The change in how other students treated Billy was palpable. It wasn't just that they avoided him, there was a distinct sense of respect, or at least, a healthy dose of fear mixed in. Kids who had never given him a second glance now made sure to step aside when he walked by. They lowered their voices when he was near, and some even offered hesitant smiles. Some of the smaller kids, the ones who had been victims of Mark and his crew, looked at Billy with open admiration. They saw him as a hero, a symbol of hope that someone could stand up to the bullies and win. They started to gather around him, seeking his protection, his advice. But Billy wasn't comfortable with the attention. He didn't want to be a hero. He just wanted to be left alone. He wasn't sure how to handle these new expectations, this new responsibility. He was just a kid after all. There were also the students who were wary of him. They saw him as a threat, someone who had disrupted the established order. They whispered behind his back, wondering if he would turn on them next. They treated him with cautious politeness, careful not to offend him. Billy could sense their unease, their fear. He knew he had to do something to reassure them, to show them that he wasn't a bully himself. He just didn't know what to do. He was still figuring things out, still trying to navigate this new and unfamiliar landscape. He longed for the days when he was just the shy, quiet new kid, even with all its problems. At least then he knew where he stood. Now everything was uncertain. During lunch, while Billy was sitting alone, trying to eat his sandwich, a girl approached his table. She was about his age, with bright, intelligent eyes and a friendly smile. He recognized her. She was in his English class. Her name was Sarah. He tensed up, expecting her to be like the others, either afraid or overly impressed. But she surprised him. "Hi," she said, her voice soft but confident. "My name is Sarah. I saw what happened yesterday after school." Billy just nodded, unsure of what to say. "I just wanted to say," she continued, "that was amazing. The way you fought, it was like something out of a movie." Billy shifted uncomfortably. "It wasn't a big deal," he mumbled, avoiding eye contact. "It was a big deal," Sarah insisted. "You stood up to Mark and his friends. No one has ever done that before. You were really brave." Billy finally looked up at her, surprised by her sincerity. "I just wanted them to leave me alone," he said. "Well, you definitely got their attention," Sarah said with a smile. "Listen, I know you're new here and it probably feels like everyone is staring at you. But I just wanted to say that not everyone is afraid of you. Some of us actually admire you." She paused, taking a deep breath. "I'm not very good at fighting," she admitted, "but I'm good at other things. Like making friends. So, would you maybe want to be friends?" Billy stared at her, stunned. He hadn't expected anyone to offer him friendship, especially not after what happened. He hesitated for a moment, then a small smile crept across his face. "Yeah," he said. "I'd like that." It was the first genuine smile he'd had in a long time. Maybe Northwood Middle School wouldn't be so bad after all. Maybe, just maybe, things were starting to look up. As the days went by, Billy found himself at a crossroads. He had a choice to make. He could embrace his new reputation as the tough kid, the fighter, the one who stood up to the bullies. He could use his skills to protect others, to become a symbol of strength and resistance. He could become the hero that some people already saw him as. But that wasn't who he wanted to be. He didn't want to be defined by violence. He didn't want to be feared. He just wanted to be normal, to have friends, to fit in. He missed the days when he could walk through the hallways without everyone staring at him. He talked to Sarah about it. She listened patiently, offering words of encouragement and support. "You don't have to be anyone you don't want to be," she said. "You can be both. You can be strong and kind. You can protect yourself and others without becoming a bully yourself." Her words resonated with him. He realized that he didn't have to choose one path or the other. He could be true to himself while still using his skills for good. He decided to use his new reputation wisely. He wouldn't go looking for trouble, but he wouldn't back down if someone needed his help. He would be a protector, not a predator. He would be strong, but he would also be kind. He would be Billy the fighter, but also Billy the friend. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. The weight of the decision lifted from his shoulders, replaced with a sense of purpose. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he was ready to try. A few weeks later, Mark approached Billy. He was alone, without David and Kevin. He looked nervous and uncomfortable, his usual swagger gone. Billy tensed, ready for anything. "Hey," Mark said, his voice barely a whisper. Billy just stared at him, waiting. I wanted to apologize," Mark stammered, avoiding eye contact. "For everything. For the bullying, for the backpack thing, for everything." Billy was surprised. He hadn't expected this. He had expected Mark to seek revenge, to try to regain his power. But this was unexpected. "It wasn't right," Mark continued. "I was being a jerk. And I learned my lesson. The hard way." He managed a weak smile. Billy studied him carefully, trying to gauge his sincerity. He could see the genuine remorse in Mark's eyes. He had changed. "I don't expect you to forgive me," Mark said. "But I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry." He paused, then added almost as an afterthought, maybe we could start over? Maybe we could even be friends." Billy considered his offer. He knew that forgiving Mark wouldn't be easy. But he also knew that holding on to anger and resentment would only hurt him in the long run. And maybe, just maybe, Mark deserved a second chance. Everyone makes mistakes, after all. He extended his hand to Mark. "Apology accepted," he said. "And as for being friends, let's just take it one step at a time." Mark's face lit up. He shook Billy's hand, a genuine smile spreading across his face. "Thanks," he said. "Thanks, Billy. Maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of something new. Not just for Mark, but for Billy too. A chance to build bridges, to heal old wounds, and to create a better future." Billy's story is a reminder that things aren't always what they seem. It's easy to judge people based on their appearance or their reputation, but you never really know what someone is capable of until you give them a chance, or until they are pushed too far. It's also a story about the importance of standing up for yourself. Billy was bullied and harassed, but he didn't let it break him. He found the strength within himself to fight back, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. He showed everyone that he wasn't someone to be messed with. But perhaps the most important message is that it's never too late to change. Mark made mistakes, big mistakes. But he learned from them, he apologized, and he tried to make amends. He showed that even bullies can change, that even the toughest hearts can be softened. So, the next time you see someone who is being bullied, don't just stand by and watch. Speak up, offer your support, and let them know that they are not alone. And the next time you are tempted to judge someone, remember Billy's story. Remember that everyone has their own struggles, their own secrets, and their own hidden strengths. And remember that even the quietest, shyest kid might just be a deadly fighter waiting to be awakened. Because sometimes the biggest mistakes are made when you underestimate someone, especially when you fill their backpack with garbage. The end.